The Confederation of Aligned Species had been watching humanity from a distance for 3,000 years. It wasn't the kind of watching that came from friendship or alliance. No, it was more like scientists observing an experiment they couldn't quite figure out. Humanity had done something that no other species in the known galaxy had ever managed to do. They had stopped fighting. It wasn't a gradual thing either. 3,000 years ago, humans had been at the peak of their military power. They had weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. They had technology that made other warlike species look primitive. And then, almost overnight in galactic terms, they just stopped. They took apart their weapons, shut down their war machines, and decided that peace was the way forward. The Confederation didn't understand it. Every other species in the galaxy had achieved peace through exhaustion, through being conquered, or through simple extinction. But humans had chosen it willingly at the height of their power. They spent the next 3,000 years creating art that could make you weep, music that could reach across the void of space, and philosophy that even the oldest species found profound. They built gardens on dead worlds and turned weapons factories into schools. When Commander Valthor and his Dominion fleet arrived in human space, the Confederation observers positioned their monitoring stations carefully. They expected this would be the end of humanity's strange experiment. The Dominion didn't negotiate. They didn't compromise. They conquered, enslaved, or exterminated. That was their way, and they were good at it. Valthor's ships were massive, dark things that blotted out stars as they moved. They dropped out of hyperspace right above Earth, humanity's home world. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, with its blue oceans and green continents, cities that glowed softly at night, and orbital stations that drifted serenely in the darkness. It looked vulnerable. It looked like an easy target. The Dominion commander opened all communication channels at once. His message was simple and had been used on 100 other worlds. Surrender immediately or face total destruction. Submit to Dominion rule or watch your world burn. The usual threats delivered with the confidence of someone who had never been refused. What happened next confused everyone watching. Human voices responded almost immediately, but they weren't panicked. They weren't desperate. They were calm, almost friendly. Various human officials appeared on screens throughout the Dominion fleet, and they were all saying essentially the same thing. Would the Dominion like to come down and talk? Could they discuss this over some refreshments? Was there any way to resolve this peacefully? And they were smiling. Every single one of them had this patient, gentle smile that made Valthor's skin crawl in a way he couldn't explain. He had conquered 17 species. He had seen every reaction to invasion. Fear, anger, desperation, false bravado, genuine defiance. But he had never seen this. This calm acceptance mixed with what almost seemed like amusement, like humanity knew something he didn't. Valthor decided a demonstration was necessary. These humans clearly didn't understand the situation. He targeted Orbital Station 7, one of their larger space stations. It was a beautiful thing, really, spinning slowly above Earth's northern hemisphere. Home to 10,000 humans, a combination of research facility and residential area. The order was given. The weapons fired. The station simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, reflecting sunlight off its solar panels, and the next moment there was just expanding debris and vapor. 10,000 humans dead in an instant. Valthor waited for the screaming to start, for the panic, for the desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, a human appeared on his main screen. The name tag identified him as Ambassador David Miller. He was an older man, maybe 60 in Earth years, with gray hair and kind eyes. He looked at the debris field that had been Orbital Station 7, looked back at Valthor, and his expression never changed from that same calm, patient smile. "We evacuated the station 3 minutes before you fired," David said quietly. "We've been tracking your fleet since you entered our space. Everyone's safe." He paused. "We'd still prefer to talk. Would you reconsider?" Across the galaxy, Confederation observers felt something they hadn't expected. Unease. 3,000 years of peace should have made humanity weak, should have made them easy prey. But there was something in David's eyes, something old and deep, that contradicted his gentle words and soft smile. Other species that had gone peaceful became soft all the way through. They forgot how to fight. They lost the instincts that kept species alive in a dangerous galaxy. But looking at David's face, at that knowing smile, the observers realized that maybe humanity hadn't forgotten anything at all. Maybe they had just decided to put away for a while. Valthor felt it too, though he would never admit it. A warrior's instinct that told him something was wrong. But he was Dominion. He didn't back down. He didn't negotiate with prey. "You will surrender immediately," he growled. "Your world, your people, everything you have, or I will reduce your planet to ash." David nodded slowly, as if Valthor had said something reasonable. "Of course, we'd be happy to discuss terms. But first, Commander, would you like to understand what you're asking us to surrender? We maintain a museum, you see, a place of remembrance. It would only take a few hours to show you. Then you'll know exactly what humanity is offering to give up." Valthor laughed. "A tour? A museum?" This was clearly a stalling tactic, but it was also an opportunity. He could see humanity's weakness firsthand, understand their soft civilization, and then crush them more efficiently. Besides, his fleet controlled the entire system now. What could humanity possibly do? "Very well," he agreed. "Show me your precious museum. Show me what you become in 3,000 years of peace. Then we'll discuss your surrender." David's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that made even the Confederation observers lean closer to their monitoring equipment. "Thank you, Commander," David said softly. "I think you'll find it very educational." The Museum of Remembrance floated in orbit around Mars like a massive cathedral in space. It was huge, easily the size of a small city, its exterior a blend of polished metal and transparent sections that caught the light of the distant sun. Humanity maintained it with the kind of care usually reserved for sacred places. Every surface gleamed. Every system hummed with perfect efficiency. Commander Valthor arrived with small security detail, though he knew his fleet controlled the entire system. Ambassador David Miller met him at the docking bay, along with a younger woman who introduced herself as Rachel Foster, one of the diplomatic aides. Both wore simple, elegant clothing, and both had that same unnerving smile. The first galleries were exactly what Valthor expected, room after room showcasing 3,000 years of peace. There were sculptures that seemed to capture and hold light in ways that physics shouldn't allow, making solid metal glow with inner radiance. Musical compositions played in dedicated chambers, and even Valthor, who had no appreciation for art, felt something stir in his chest at the complexity and beauty of the sounds. They walked past scientific achievements, displayed like trophies, medical technology that had extended human lifespans to 200 years, environmental restoration techniques that had brought dead worlds back to life, educational systems that had eliminated poverty and ignorance across hundreds of colonies, philosophy texts that even the ancient species of the Confederation had praised as profound. With each hall, Valthor felt his confidence growing. This was exactly what he thought humanity had become. Soft, artists and dreamers who had forgotten the harsh reality of the universe. They had spent 3,000 years painting pictures and writing songs while the rest of the galaxy fought for survival. They were sheep waiting to be sheared. Rachel led them through a gallery dedicated to human colony worlds. Beautiful places, all of them, gardens floating in space. Cities built with such careful attention to beauty that they looked like works of art themselves. Children playing in parks. Scientists working in laboratories that looked more like concert halls. Poets and musicians celebrated like warriors in other cultures. "Is this all you become?" Valthor asked, not bothering to hide the contempt in his voice. "Flower arrangers and song makers?" David's smile didn't change. "This is what we chose to become. Yes, but we thought you should see what came before. What we built all of this on top of." They had reached the end of the gallery. Ahead stood a set of doors unlike anything else in the museum. Black metal, heavy and sealed, with no decorations or windows. Just simple words carved into the surface. "Before the peace." Rachel's hand rested on the access panel. "We don't open this section often. Most humans never see it. We prefer to remember what we became, not what we were." But you ask what you're demanding we surrender, Commander. You should see all of it. Her smile never wavered as the massive doors began to open. The sound they made was deep and final, like a vault that had been sealed for ages. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell that Valthor recognized immediately. Military-grade preservation systems, the kind used to keep weapons functional for centuries. The first chamber made him stop walking. It was vast, stretching away into shadows that the lighting couldn't quite reach. And it was full of weapons, but not the kind of weapons he expected from a peaceful civilization that had supposedly forgotten war. These were nightmares made real. Planet crackers stood in neat rows, their targeting systems still active, their power cores humming softly. Valthor knew what they were because the Dominion had tried to build something similar and failed. These weapons could literally break a world apart, crack its crust, and turn it into an expanding field of debris. Humanity had dozens of them, maybe hundreds, disappearing into the shadows. Biological weapons in sealed containers, each one labeled with careful precision. David walked to one and read the label aloud. Designed to target specific DNA sequences. Deployment time, for hours. Sterilization of target species, 98% effective within 6 days. Side effects on other species, minimal. He looked at Valthor. We tested these. They worked. Antimatter warheads lined entire walls. Valthor's military training kicked in automatically, calculating yields, and the numbers made his blood run cold. One of these weapons could wipe out his entire fleet. One. And there were thousands of them here, each one maintained as if it might be needed tomorrow. These aren't deactivated, Valthor said, his voice barely above a whisper. No, Rachel confirmed, still smiling that patient smile. Why would we deactivate them? We didn't build museums to dead technology. Commander, we built a reminder. Everything here still works. Everything here is still ready to use. We just choose not to. The next chamber was somehow worse. It contained no physical weapons at all. Instead, there were servers, massive computing systems that filled the entire room, their cooling systems creating a constant low hum. Holographic displays showed incomprehensible strings of code scrolling past faster than any organic mind could follow. Artificial intelligence warfare systems, David explained. His voice had gone quiet, almost sad. We built these during our last great war, 3,000 years ago. They were designed to win conflicts before they even started, to calculate every possible outcome, every weakness, every vulnerability. Valthor watched as one display showed a simulation. A planet, attacked by a fleet not unlike his own. The AI calculated, adjusted, responded. The attacking fleet was gone in minutes, destroyed by coordinated strikes that came from angles they never saw. Another simulation showed biological warfare, psychological operations, economic collapse, all orchestrated with mechanical precision. 13,000 distinct methods for ending civilizations, Rachel said, standing beside a display that showed some of those methods in cold, clinical detail. Not just defeating them, ending them, making sure they could never threaten anyone again. The AI optimized everything, made extinction efficient, made genocide a science. Valthor felt something he hadn't felt in years. Real fear, not the adrenaline of combat, but the deep, existential dread of realizing you were standing next to something that could erase you and everything you love without effort. You used these, he asked. Once, David said softly. On ourselves, actually, during our last civil war. 2 human factions, both with access to weapons like these, both with AI systems telling them how to win. We nearly ended our own species. The only reason any of us survived is that both sides realized, at the same moment, that winning wasn't worth it. That's when we stopped. That's when the peace began. They walked deeper into the chamber. More weapons. More systems. Things Valthor didn't even have names for. Technology that was centuries, maybe millennia ahead of anything the Dominion possessed. All of it maintained. All of it functional. All of it just waiting. We didn't forget, Commander, Rachel said, turning to face him directly. That smile was still there, but now he could see what was behind it. Not weakness, not soft civilization. Knowledge, The knowledge of exactly how much damage they could do if they chose to. We didn't lose this knowledge when we embraced peace, David continued. We didn't become incapable of war. We became very, very good at peace while remaining excellent at war. We just decided that being good at peace was more important than being good at killing. Valthor found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. Then why show me this? Why not just use it? David's smile turned genuinely sad. Because we're hoping you'll make a different choice than the one you came here to make. We're hoping that knowing what we're capable of will help you understand that peace isn't weakness. It's strength. The strength to choose mercy when vengeance would be easier. The Confederation observers, watching through their monitoring equipment from safe distances across the system, felt something they had never experienced before. They felt fear of a peaceful species. Not because humanity was unpredictable or irrational, but because they were the opposite. They knew exactly what they could do, had calculated with precision, and had chosen not to do it for 3,000 years. That kind of restraint was more terrifying than any war cry. Commander Valthor returned to his flagship with his mind racing. The museum had shaken him. But the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that it was all an elaborate bluff. Sure, humanity had built impressive weapons 3,000 years ago, but maintaining them? Actually being able to use them after so long? That was different. Warriors didn't stay sharp without practice. Weapons didn't stay reliable without use. 3,000 years was long enough for any civilization to forget the reality of war, no matter what they kept in museums. He called his senior officers together and laid out his reasoning. Humanity was trying to intimidate them with relics and history. They were hoping fear would do what their non-existent military couldn't. But the Dominion hadn't conquered 17 species by being scared of old weapons in a museum. They needed to call humanity's bluff. And they needed to do it in a way that would break the strange, peaceful facade once and for all. 3 human colonies were selected. New Denver, a settlement of about 50,000 on a terraformed moon. Port Williams, a mining operation in an asteroid field with 30,000 workers. Settlement Jackson, a research outpost on the edge of human space with maybe 20,000 scientists and support staff. Small enough that losing them wouldn't cripple humanity, but significant enough that watching them die should break through that maddening calm. The orders went out. 3 strike groups. Conventional weapons only. No need to waste planet killers on such small targets. Just enough firepower to reduce each colony to rubble and show humanity what happened to species that refused to surrender. The warships moved into position. Targeting systems locked on. The commanders waited for Valthor's final order. He gave it with satisfaction in his voice. Fire. What happened next made no sense at all. The missiles launched, the energy beams fired. Everything worked exactly as it should. But before any weapon reached its target, every single colonist simply vanished. Not killed, not vaporized. Transported. In the span of maybe 3 minutes, 100,000 humans disappeared from those 3 colonies and reappeared on ships that sensors hadn't even detected. The weapons struck empty buildings. The colonies were destroyed, certainly. Structures collapsed, equipment melted. But there was nobody there. The casualty count was 0. Perfect evacuations conducted with a speed and precision that military operations couldn't match. And then silence. Valthor stared at the tactical displays, trying to understand what just happened. His communications officer spoke up nervously. "Commander," incoming transmission. "It's the human ambassador again." David Miller's face filled the main screen. That smile was still there, but his eyes had changed. They were harder now, colder. "Commander Valthor, we're trying very hard to maintain our peace. Please stop testing us." Another human appeared beside David, a younger man in what looked like a military uniform, though it was plain and undecorated. "I'm James Carter," he said, his voice level and calm. "We've been peaceful for 3,000 years by choice, Commander, not by necessity. Not because we forgot how to do anything else. We'd really prefer to keep it that way." Valthor felt rage building in his chest. They were talking to him like he was a child who didn't understand the situation. Like they were being patient with him. After he'd just destroyed 3 of their colonies, They were acting like this was all just a minor misunderstanding. "You think your evacuation tricks impress me?" he snarled. "You think saving a few thousand colonists changes anything? I have the firepower to reduce every human world to ash. Your peace ends now. You will surrender or you will die." David's expression didn't change. "We've given you every opportunity to choose differently, Commander. We've shown you what we're capable of. We've demonstrated our restraint. We've asked you, repeatedly, to reconsider." He paused. "You're about to make a mistake you can't take back." Valthor had heard enough. He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Activate the planet killer. Target Earth. I want these peaceful fools to watch their home world die. Then we'll see how long their smiles last." The weapon was the pride of the Dominion fleet. It had been used on 4 other worlds, and each time it had performed flawlessly. A massive device that generated a directed gravitational pulse strong enough to tear a planet's core apart. Activation took 5 minutes, and it was visible on every sensor in the system. Everyone would know what was about to happen. Everyone would have time to panic. Except humanity didn't panic. The Confederation observers, watching from their hidden positions throughout the system, detected something else. A sudden spike in energy readings from seemingly empty space. Signatures they'd never seen before. And then the planet killer simply ceased to exist. Commander Valthor was transported alone to a human ship. Not roughly, not as a prisoner being dragged in chains, but simply and efficiently. One moment he was on his bridge, surrounded by his frozen fleet, and the next he was standing in a bright, quiet room aboard a vessel called Patience. The name felt like an insult, though he knew it probably wasn't meant that way. 5 humans waited for him in a simple conference room. No guards at the door. No weapons visible anywhere. Just 5 people sitting in plain chairs around a table that looked like it belonged in a school, not a military vessel. Ambassador David Miller was there, along with Admiral Rebecca Hayes and General Thomas Wright. 2 others he hadn't met before introduced themselves as Catherine Bell, some kind of chief diplomat, and Robert Chun, who said he was a member of humanity's Elder Council. All 5 of them wore that same calm smile, that same expression that had stopped making him angry and started making him deeply, fundamentally afraid. Catherine touched the control panel on the table, and a holographic display lit up the center of the room. Valthor's hearts both skipped when he recognized what he was seeing. Dominion worlds. All of them. The core planets. The conquered territories. The secret military installations that weren't supposed to show up on any maps. Everything. The display zoomed in on the Dominion home world. Population centers appeared in blue. Billions of civilians going about their lives, completely unaware of what was happening light years away. Military bases glowed red. Hundreds of them, each one labeled with exact troop counts and equipment inventories. And in gold, the leadership bunkers. The hidden fortresses where the Dominion High Command lived and worked. Locations that were supposed to be the most carefully guarded secrets in the Empire. Humanity knew where all of them were, down to the meter. "We've known where everything you value is for quite some time," Robert said. His voice was gentle, grandfatherly even, which somehow made it worse. "We've been tracking your species for 2,000 years, Commander, since you first achieved faster-than-light travel and started expanding into the galaxy. We know your culture. We understand your biology better than your own doctors do. We've studied your psychology, your philosophy, your military doctrine. We know the names of your High Command's children. We know their daily routines. We know everything." David leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "We've known for 3,000 years how to end any conflict in minutes, any species in hours, any empire in days. The technology you saw in the museum, that was the starting point. We've had 3 millennia to improve on it, to refine it, to make it more efficient. We chose not to use any of it. That choice, Commander, is what defines us now." Valthor found his voice, though it came out hoarse. "You're saying you could destroy us at any time, before we even entered your space, before we ever became a threat." "Yes," Catherine said simply. The holographic display shifted, showing simulations, Dominion worlds, their defenses neutralized in moments. Command structures collapsed, not through violence, but through surgical precision that left populations alive and infrastructure intact. We could have ended your empire 200 years ago when you destroyed the Pelthian people, or 500 years ago when you enslaved the Korthan. We watched you do terrible things to species who couldn't defend themselves, and we chose not to intervene. Why? The question burst out of Valthor before he could stop it. If you're so powerful, so advanced, why let us continue? Why let us hurt others? Robert's aged face grew sad. Because intervention itself is a form of violence. Because making choices for other species, even to save them, is a kind of conquest. We decided 3,000 years ago that we would only act in defense of ourselves and those who explicitly asked for our protection. The Pelthians never knew we existed. The Korthan never called for help. So we watched and we documented and we grieved, but we didn't act. Until we came for you, Valthor said quietly. Until you came for us, Rebecca confirmed. You made a choice to invade our space, to threaten our worlds, to kill our people. That changed the equation. That gave us the right to respond. Thomas gestured at the holographic display, which now showed Valthor's fleet, still frozen in space around Earth. The peace wasn't surrender, Commander. It wasn't us giving up strength or forgetting how to fight. It was evolution. We learned something that most species never figure out. The capacity for destruction doesn't require its use. True strength isn't in how much damage you can do. It's in choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier and frankly more satisfying. Catherine's smile turned genuinely sad. We could have ended your species today. We have dozens of ways to do it. We could make it painless. Just shut down biological functions across your entire empire simultaneously. Or we could make a lesson, make it loud and visible so every other aggressive species in the galaxy would think twice. We could have done many things, Commander. Instead, we're going to do this. She pressed another control, and the display changed to show his fleet. You're being released. Right now. Your ships will be escorted to the edge of our space by vessels you won't see, but will absolutely know are there. You'll be given safe passage home. No retaliation. No punishment. No consequences except this single condition. Never return. Never threaten human space again. And tell everyone what you learned here. Valthor stared at them. You're letting us go? After we killed your people? After we destroyed your colonies? We evacuated those colonies before your weapon struck. David reminded him. You destroyed buildings and equipment. That can all be rebuilt. You didn't actually kill anyone, though you certainly tried. He paused. And yes, we're letting you go. Because killing you accomplishes nothing except adding more death to a galaxy that already has far too much of it. What if we come back? Valthor asked. What if we rebuild and return in greater numbers? Rebecca's smile never changed. Then we'll stop you again. And we'll keep stopping you, no matter how many times it takes, until you learn the lesson we're trying to teach. Peace is possible. Peace is preferable. And peace is what we'll defend, even from those who haven't learned to value it yet. Within an hour, Valthor was back on his flagship. His fleet could move again, engines responding normally, all systems functional. Human ships appeared on sensors, sleek vessels that hadn't been visible before, forming an escort pattern. They guided the Dominion fleet to the border in silence. No communications, no threats, just quiet, professional efficiency. As they crossed out of human space, Valthor looked back at Earth on his displays. The planet looked exactly as it had when he'd arrived. Peaceful, beautiful, unchanged by everything that had happened. Human ships were already returning to their normal activities. Civilian traffic resuming. Construction crews heading out to rebuild those 3 colonies he'd destroyed. It was as if the entire incident had been nothing more than a minor interruption to their daily routine. They defended themselves with overwhelming force, demonstrated capabilities that made the Dominion look primitive, and then just went back to their art and philosophy and peaceful existence like nothing had happened. That was when Valthor finally understood. Humanity's peace wasn't a weakness. It was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. A species that could do what they'd done, that had the power to end any threat instantly, and chose instead to show mercy? That wasn't soft. That was terrifying. because it meant their peace was a choice. An active, conscious, continuously renewed choice. And a species that could choose peace after mastering such complete and total war was far more dangerous than any conqueror. Conqueror to be fought, defeated, overthrown. But how did you fight someone who refused to be your enemy? How did you defeat someone who won by not fighting? The Confederation observers throughout the galaxy were updating their assessments. Humanity wasn't prey, wasn't even warriors. They were something new, something unprecedented. Guardians, perhaps a species that would defend but never attack, protect but never conquer. And in a galaxy full of violence, that made them the most powerful force anyone had ever encountered. The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Commander Valther's fleet had returned home with stories that seemed impossible. Humanity had weapons beyond imagination, but refused to use them. They had the power to end any conflict instantly, but chose mercy instead. They had held an entire invasion fleet frozen in space, and then simply let them go home. At first, many species didn't believe it. The Dominion tried to suppress the information, but you can't keep that kind of secret when hundreds of ship crews all witnessed the same thing. Within months, the truth was everywhere. Humanity wasn't weak. They were choosing peace from a position of overwhelming strength. The first species to officially request human protection was the Corthan remnants. They'd been enslaved by the Dominion for 5 centuries, their home world strip-mined, their people scattered across work camps. When the Dominion showed weakness after the failed invasion, the Corthans saw their chance. They sent a simple message to Earth: help us and we'll never forget it. Humanity's response came within hours. Not warships, not armies, but a single diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador David Miller and a document. The document was delivered to the Dominion High Command with a polite note. It explained that the Corthan people were now under human protection. Any act of aggression against them would be considered an act of aggression against humanity. The Dominion had 48 hours to begin releasing all Corthan prisoners and evacuating all Corthan territories. The Dominion complied. They had no choice. They'd seen what humanity could do. Within 6 months, 3 more species requested protection. Then 7. Then 17. Each one had been oppressed, conquered, or threatened by larger empires. Each one knew that humanity wouldn't demand tribute or servitude in return. They'd studied human history, seen how humanity treated their own colonies with respect and freedom. The protection being offered came with no strings attached, except a commitment to peaceful coexistence. The Dominion began to fracture. Subject species rebelled, knowing that humanity would guarantee their freedom. The empire that had conquered 17 civilizations started to collapse as 14 of them broke away within a single year. The Dominion High Command tried to respond with force, but every time they prepared for military action against a breakaway territory, human ships would appear. Not threatening, just present. A quiet reminder that violence would not be tolerated. Commander Valthor watched all of this from the Dominion home world and felt something fundamental break inside him. His entire life had been built on military philosophy. Strength through conquest, security through dominance, power through fear. He'd risen through the ranks by being better at violence than anyone else. And now he was watching that entire worldview crumble because one species had figured out something better. He sent a message to Earth. A simple request for asylum. He expected to be rejected, maybe even mocked. Instead, he received a response within a day from David Miller himself. "You're welcome here, Commander. Come whenever you're ready." Valthor arrived on Earth 3 weeks later, along with 50 other Dominion officers who'd made the same choice. They'd all realized that everything they'd been taught about strength and power was wrong. Or not wrong exactly, but incomplete. Humanity had shown them a bigger picture that they hadn't known existed. David met them personally at the spaceport. That same patient smile, that same calm demeanor. He offered them tea, which was apparently a human custom for welcoming guests. He arranged housing for all of them in a residential area near the Museum of Remembrance. Small apartments, nothing fancy, but comfortable and overlooking the massive structure that had changed Valthor's entire understanding of a universe. "You're not prisoners here." David explained to the group of former Dominion officers, "You're not even really refugees. Think of yourselves as students, if you want. We'd like to learn from you as much as you learn from us. We want to understand warrior cultures better, so we can more effectively make peace with them." One of the officers, a woman named Kelthra who commanded 3 battle groups, asked the question they were all thinking. "Why would you trust us? We came to conquer you. We tried to kill your people." David's smile never wavered. Because people can change. Because holding grudges serves no purpose. Because the best way to end the cycle of violence is to show that there's an alternative. He paused. "And honestly, because we think you can help us. You understand the military mindset in a way we don't anymore. That understanding could save lives." The next year saw changes across the galaxy that nobody had thought possible. General Thomas Wright, who'd been retired before the Dominion invasion, took command of something humanity called a Protection Initiative. It wasn't an army exactly, more like a volunteer defense force made up of human ships and crews who committed to guaranteeing the safety of any species that requested protection. They never occupied territory, never demanded control, never imposed human law or culture on anyone. They simply maintained a presence, a quiet reminder that aggression would not be tolerated. Admiral Rebecca Hayes commanded a fleet that grew to over 300 vessels, and in 3 years of operation, they never fired a single weapon. Their mere presence was enough to prevent conflicts before they started. The Confederation held an emergency session to discuss humanity's new role in galactic politics. Some species were concerned about any single civilization having so much power. Others pointed out that humanity had possessed that power for 3,000 years and had chosen to do nothing with it until directly threatened. After 2 weeks of debate, they reached a decision. Humanity was formally recognized not as conquerors or victims or even allies, but as something the galaxy had never seen before. Guardians, a species that protected through the promise of restrained power. Margaret Foster, a human diplomat who'd worked in Confederation spaces for 20 years, explained it to the assembled representatives simply. "We spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy," she said. "We got very, very good at it. Then we spent 3,000 years learning how to preserve, to build, to create. We got good at that too. Both skill sets remain sharp. We haven't forgotten anything. We've just added to our capabilities rather than replacing them." A new era began spreading across the galaxy. Species that had been preparing for war started redirecting resources toward peaceful development, not because they feared human retaliation, but because humanity had proven that peaceful coexistence was actually possible and actually preferable. Ancient conflicts started resolving themselves as both sides realized that neither wanted to be the civilization that forced humanity to demonstrate their military capabilities. Valthor, who now went by Val, because his human neighbors found it easier to pronounce, spent his days working with humanity's diplomatic corps. He gave lectures to young humans about warrior psychology, about how militaristic species thought, and what motivated them, not to teach humans how to fight wars, but to help them understand how to prevent wars in others. He taught them about honor cultures, about species where refusing a challenge was worse than dying. He explained economic motivations for conflict, territorial instincts that were hardwired into biology, religious and philosophical differences that seemed impossible to bridge. And the humans listened, took notes, and figured out ways to address those underlying issues before they escalated into violence. One evening, Val stood before the Museum of Remembrance, looking up at the massive structure. David found him there, as he often did. They'd formed an odd friendship, the ambassador and the former invasion commander. "Do you ever regret it?" Val asked quietly. "Giving up war?" David's smile appeared, that knowing expression that had once terrified an entire fleet. "We didn't give up anything, Val. We still know how to fight. We're still capable of it. We're probably better at it now than we ever were before. We've had 3,000 years to improve the technology, refine the tactics, perfect the strategies. We just decided that being good at peace was more important than being good at war. And if someone forces you to fight again, if someone doesn't give you a choice." The smile never wavered, but something flickered in David's eyes. Something old and deep. "Then we'll be very, very good at it. But we'll still hope that day never comes. We'll still do everything in our power to find another way. That's what makes us different, Val. Not that we can't fight, but that we really, truly don't want to. Across the galaxy, humanity's smile remained constant on diplomatic vessels, on protection fleet ships, on colony worlds and space stations, and anywhere humans went. That same patient, knowing smile. And now every species understood its true meaning. It meant, we hope we never have to show you what we're capable of, but we absolutely can if we must. The peace continued, spreading further each year, not because humanity was weak, not because they'd forgotten how to fight, but because they were strong enough to maintain peace, even when violence would have been easier. And that strength, more than any weapon, more than any fleet, was what changed the galaxy forever.